let me introduce 𝗗𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 of Somni, and he is an acclaimed multidisciplinary artist whose work transcends various mediums, ranging from digital art, drawing, painting, sculpture, and installation. Coming from an architectural background, his main interest lies at the intersection between the physical environment in which we live in and the fictional world that he creates, challenging the perception of space, reality, and experience. Please give him a round of applause.
Today, and thanks Datum Plus for adding me to this year's conversation. It's really great to be representing the younger audience and crowd here today. So I'm in my 20s. So my name is Chuah Chong. I'm an artist, world builder, as well as what would you call a speculative architect. I'm the founder of Somni, an art direction, digital imagination, as well as a research studio. So alongside with a creative group of visionary, we are part of a new platform called ANTS, A-N-T-S. It's pretty much a collective of body getting together, defining the digital contemporary culture in Malaysia. So on today's presentation, I thought I would narrate and bring you all on a journey, sharing a glimpses into my world, presenting it in, I guess, a very chaotic fragments. I'll be throwing and feeding you all with the collection of work done by us in a non-linear order, through thought experiment, exploration into the narrative and condition that I find interesting, as well as the stories, the landscape and soundscape of the imaginary.
Some 3,700, 1,900 hours. I eventually learned the name of my saviors. With the human tongue, it is best pronounced in 𝗗𝗓𝗧𝗨𝗠. Their relationship to energy is both reverent and utilitarian. Energy becomes life, and to the eternal system of energy will life return when the form it wears grows old. Space, hidden beneath rocks, bell-like structures, I observed a ritual of the return resonant symphony. When weak form controls their cadences, the electronic code of their existence, new ones are waiting, their eternal resonance of their own mutinously lush, that area of the flame, sage and remake, study and record the bells, the resonance, change day, I've dedicated myself to the study of this paradise. M1 is a paradise, teeming with exotic animal life and stunning landscapes. A new wonder awaits in every grain of sand under every rock. Hundreds of lifetimes will uncover all its secrets made and remade from the eternal cycle of energy.
Within the realm of storytelling and pretty much research to mainly review and craft narrative of human society through a diverse range of time-based media as well as 3D environments. I love crafting stories, that's what I do. Contemporary radical exploration that pretty much transcend a traditional architectural design thinking, mainly working within the realm of fiction, engaging with framework that operate within the implication of our rapidly shifting cultures, technologies and socio-economics, immersing ourselves into the current or potential reality that we all live in nowadays. So on the notion of fiction, fiction is pretty much, to me, a mode of speculation. It's very common in entertainment, but fiction also holds vast potential as a tool for techno-cultural analysis and critique. I embrace the power of fiction to review emerging causalities and use storytelling as a methodology to introduce new ideas and challenge our existing assumptions. Architecture, personally, is rooted in a purposeful manipulation of space to influence human behavior and generate cultural meaning. But design can be a set of relationship. Design is pretty much the story in spaces, and design could probably prototype possible futures. And I guess the idea of the future as a project are more and more relevant nowadays, given the past 2 years of the pandemic years as well in our moment of uncertainty. So as we slowly begin to live our life online and design within the virtual environment, the idea of the space as the physical environment in which we can walk and touch might somewhat be limiting. The virtual meta or metaverse are more and more becoming powerful territories that increasingly shape our behaviors and cultures. Working through the lens of the metaverse, the world may seem fantastical and strange. However, this can be a foundation of storytelling. We can work entirely from real events to use fiction and speculation to exaggerate or stretch it to an extreme the changes that are happening all around us, creating lies that reveal the truth. In this coming era, our human capabilities are going to be augmented by computational systems that pretty much help us think, robotic systems that help us construct, and digital nervous system that connects the world far beyond our natural senses. What bonds us all here today is our imagination to tell the most abstract story. This leap ahead allows generative design tools by using computer and algorithm to synthesize geometry, coming out with new design entirely by itself out of automation. Back in 2016, the Visual Computing Lab at the Technical University of Munich published a paper video titled Face to Face, Real-Time Face Capture. Hollywood airbrush advertising and the recent politics of our own social media feeds have made us familiar with the idea that reality sometimes can be extremely convincingly fake or edited. Fake news of nowadays. The idea that this editing might occur in real time isn't yet mainstream. The uni team, pretty much what they did was they presented this reality in a very terrifying format. Video of political prominent figure and media figure have their expression and mouth movement reformed by an actor with astonishing realism. On top of this, Adobe, the company, has rolled out Vocal, a software that can replicate voice, allowing us to literally put words in other people's mouth. This technology are or can be frightening weapons when presented in a very political context. But pretty much nowadays, they have already, I guess, through the virtue of cuteness, made it to all our pocket, AR, VR, whatsoever. So I think for now, let's all take a step back to paint the world that we all live in, right? I was born into the generation where, I guess I'm in the sort of transitional generation where I got introduced to the world of social media. I think just odd, 14 years ago, iPhone got introduced to the world and all these things, right? In the beginning, there's a certain kind of resistance from my end and detachment from me and how I behave online, but I guess slowly over time, that sort of molded into the reality that we are all in, right? Yeah, it's crazy how we will be able to say anything online, and we are being affected by what people kind of hold conversation to us. So that's pretty much the reality that we are all in nowadays. 2018, Google pretty much what they did was they created an AI that using GANs, generative adversary network, to kind of train an AI to be able to hold real life conversation for you. So you pretty much have a personal PA, I guess. Then it flows into the idea of 2020 when the China social crediting system quantifying social behavior of the world of how we live in, and last week announcement also of Facebook changing their name to Meta, M-E-T-A, Metaverse. So yeah, that's the kind of new frontier that we are slowly moving into when we are holding or conversing through the body of a meta-human or a body of an avatar.
What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
That was a real call you just heard. The amazing thing is the assistant can actually understand the nuances of conversation.
Look at these images. Now, tell me which Obama here is real.
To help families refinance their homes, to invest in things like high-tech manufacturing, clean energy, and the infrastructure that creates good new jobs.
Anyone? The answer is none of them. None of these is actually real.
In some of China's largest cities, a high-tech effort is underway to bust low-level offenders, jaywalkers. Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face, and then publicly shame them on nearby video screens. It's all part of the Chinese government's new social credit system.
Today, we are seen as a social media company. But in our DNA, we are a company that builds technology to connect people. And the metaverse is the next frontier, just like social networking was when we got started.
if we all have to build a room that contains within it everything that could be counted as you, it will include everything that you have ever touched, everything you have ever bought or made, and it will be full of symbols and pictures and memory of every person you have ever loved, your social network friends that you have made in high school and now forgotten, annoying colleagues sometimes from work who you talk to every day, pretty much from passport and licensing and credit ratings and the media history that shapes the context of all your life. What if you fit all of those into one room? It is all interacting with parts of your distributed and digitized identity. The project titled The Room of Me is pretty much an allegory to a person who's alive of the digital age that we all live in nowadays. Behind of the fast fashion we all consume is massive million of hands, lake of chemicals, uncountable factory, all composed of a landscape scattered across the world. I'll carry on right now with the story from the opposite end of this economy. This expedition of mine to the factory of India and Bangladesh back in 2014 led to the creation of whole new landscape. A metaphoric island of made in the Bureau of Unforgotten Words stitched into the tag of every garment. The clothes we all wear today are not just stitched pieces of fabric, but they can also be landscapes. The choices we make in a high street store or in front of the full-length mirror sometimes can set in motion territorial scale effect, industrial landscape and massive factory across the other side of the planet. The island of Made-in is a distant land populated with the people and machines that craft the fashion we all wear. As we wander through this landscape, we dive ourselves into the world hidden within our clothes and immerse ourselves into our own wardrobe. In this distant land, industrial monsters roam free. Distant mountains are found from cotton loomways and valleys are lined with buttonhole threads. The fashion supply chain in the end is remapped as a surreal place with its own history and geography, one that we are unaware of most of the time but could, I guess, choose to inhabit it through our imagination and dreams when we go to sleep at night. Imagination and dreams, sometimes fantasy can give us new appreciation of the world that we live in on planet Earth. 27 years of Lazarine delights use magical realism to produce a project of pure world building. It's centered around the discovery of a trinary system of planet orbiting two distant stars, Somnia XYZG. This work pretty much takes the form of evidence brought back to Earth from this imagined land by an ambitious explorer. The reality that the explorer creates and records is pretty much whimsical and fantastical, but I guess it can also bring us back into reality as more and more we can consider the possibility of looking life at Earth or the mundane Earth in a new way.
Somnia XYZG, I felt alive once more, overcome with the thirst to experience everything, learn everything. My joy and novelty was hedonistic and reckless. I was an explorer, called to seek out new worlds and civilizations, to go beyond the frontiers of my own knowledge and gather for others the wonders of the unknown. I remember the contraction of my heart as I entered the system's orbit. My mind raced ahead to the future and placed itself within alien landscapes, my skin tingling with the anticipation of new atmospheres and textures. The lethargy of my earthly existence was falling away. I had been an automaton, moving through overstudied environments. The 27 years I spent with Insomnia XYZG revealed to me the beauty, complexity, danger, and wonder of her worlds. It's a joy to share my footage and my discoveries. Voices clearer than mine will recount my journey. By way of an early conclusion, I will say that while the laws of thermodynamics indeed confirm that there is nothing new under the sun, it does not then follow that we can never look at the world in a new way. Someone 26 hours since dawn. The landing was harder than I expected. My fuel reserves are gone and I'm suffering from the low oxygen levels. I've noticed a sulfurous tang on the air. It's been the greatest relief to remove my suit and protect my skin instead with a curious heat-resistant powder which I discovered through pure chance. My sense of touch returned. I ran my fingers across the walls of the cave where I'm camped, and I found them to be slippery, like soap, with pieces that flake away like pastry.
So in a nutshell, pretty much this is a project based on an exploration. Some guy went away for 1 year from planet Earth and went to this kind of trinary system of planet for 27 years because the time there is slightly slower than Earth. And during the 27 years, what he did was he cartographed, he kind of mapped out the environment, like studying like the gravitational system of the universe, like what he brought back was this a book, a codex, what I call a codex, a manuscript for pretty much like I would say encyclopedic knowledge of the world, of his experience, his journey, etc., etc. So I think I'll spend the next 30 seconds or odd so showing you glimpses into the book that of the world. So you have for example, the magnetic field and gravitational wave of the world. It jumps into the mass study of the planet, the gravitational attraction of two of the planets. So those are some of the specimens he found, and he cartographed it using a digitized kind of manner to archive the geo specimens and the soil sample. And but what's really interesting about this thing is how do you challenge, let's say, an architect? How do you design in a very extreme condition, right? Given there are 3 sunrise in a planet, and how do you actually design around things like that? So you kind of do all this analysis and so fragments of the planet jumps into some of the elevation of one of the world in the Inkole civilization area called the Luyong Poly settlements.
Brushing my fingers
and it goes
against
on
the
and on and on.
rocks, I felt a strong vibration. I was watching footage from my drone up ahead when I first saw it. A sudden flash. I knew then that I'd found them, whatever they are. Exploring further, I came to the base of the structures towering into the sky. I spied platforms like solid webs arching overhead and the telltale glint of small fires. I thought I would edge closer, try to find some clue to their biology. I failed and still have no idea what these people might look like. However, undeniably they have a civilization and some system of production. 1 minute I was standing there, wondering, and then with a single step, I was displaced.
So To move on from the idea of imagination and dreams, the next project I would like to talk on is on the notion of an AI automation. So us as creative, we are being inspired through the exposure of time and references and influence around us, right? So over time of those exposure, it pretty much builds out to a creative identity in our taste preferencing, etc., etc. So last year I started thinking about what if the computer can do the same thing, right? So out there's a technology called GPT-3, Generative Pre-Transformer. It's under OpenAI, which is an open source code. You can extract it. But what it is pretty much a language learning model from influence. Ultimately, what I did was I created an AI identity. Her cute little name is 𝗗𝗓𝗨𝗠. What I did was, in the beginning, I curated a set of storybooks for her to learn, and use that as a set of foundation and influence to fine-tune her brain to pretty much gain knowledge from those identity, from those foundation books that I trained her. So after training process, she reads really fast. Like she can go through a whole book in less than 1 minute or so. Over time, she builds out her own training. You can pretty much hold a conversation with her, but she can reply to you based on her identity and her preferencing, right? So the idea is who actually own, I think the question lies in the intellectual property of those words coming out of her mouth. Is it me, the creator of her, or does it belong to her as an identity? Because that's how humanity, we build out our referencing and our identity as well.
Faced. What if we kissed at the intersection between art, writing, and technology?
So FACE, F-A-C 3D, is a collaborative exploration encompassing the idea of the digital self, one that connects machine learning, digital art, and the written word. The project consists mainly of an interactive program featuring fragment body of work on the digital now. It's pretty much centered around a printed publication, offering nuances surrounding the complex relationship between our human identity of today and the virtual realm of the Metaverse. So if anyone wants a book, give me a shout later. I'll pass it on to you. Also, an extension of the project phase, 𝗗𝗨𝗧𝗨𝗠 is a video game installation developed during the recent pandemic. In the peak of the MCO, I use a methodology called pixel streaming, casting a virtual gallery onto a web page so anyone can access it and play around. Made in response to the idea of unhappiness, interpret the notion of isolation through a multi-layer context. The worldwide lockdown, as well as the isolated path of an artist, here stretched human figure are juxtaposed in the center of the visual, expressing a certain longing for human touch and interaction, but at the same time also addressing the perpetual struggle between individual and the collective concern. So that was quite fun. During the MCO, when everyone's stuck in the lockdown, they could, I guess, expand their universe through just a web page or a screen of a web page.
We might consider ourselves as thoughts flowing through the city's mind. Here, in the city, where thoughts are most abundant and diverse, lie the heart of Leviathan's dreams, fears, and imagination.
to end with a project titled At the Dawn of the New Millennium, Our Span of Control is Almost Limitless. It's pretty much a curation under cloud project under the 𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 directory. Here's a collaborative work between me, 𝗗𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗠, he's a political theorist, as well as Zach, a creative technologist. We took seriously Mahathir's forewarning of suppression of the humanity in the time of modernity. What we did was we ran speeches, advertorials, and magazine produced in the time of 𝗗𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 through an AI, GPT-3 as well, same as the technology that I used for the previous project, producing a stream of text that simulate the futurity of 1990s for our time.
Nowadays, with the growth of the rural population, most of Malaysia's vegetables are grown in the open, accessible terrain of the sea. The terrain is rich in chemicals that help to bind the seeds of trees to the soil, and many of the world's best growing operations are situated on relatively flat ground. The flat ground also allows cheap labor, an important driver of growth for a variety of crops. The most successful operation, however, is the one that turns seeds, the very soil that yields the soil for most crops. The successful operation at hand is called the Nutritional Rescue Operation, and for the past 3 years the government has been holding a conference to plan and finance the effort to grow more than 1,000 million tons of produce. To help those on the receiving end of the recovery effort, the Prime Minister has created a suitable location for processing of foodstuffs and sufficient parking areas for all 10,000 cars that arrive on the highways each year. The crops are grown in 16 niche zones, including the North, Central, and Eastern Oceans, as well as in the heart of Asia's most populous nation. The 10,000-acre heap zone includes the large prime real estate development compound of the Petronas Towers, which is valued at more than $6 billion.
So in a nutshell, what we did was we trained a new robot to pick up the languages and nuances of the 𝗗𝗧𝗨𝗠 manifesto, announced at, I think, the 90s. Pretty much what we did was we taught a bot to reimagine an alternate 𝗗𝗗𝗨𝗠 2020. So it's pretty fun, you know, like relinquish control of what the future is going to be through a robot. We relinquish the cherished and assumption of humanism to imagine new ways of automatic critique at the scale of computational speed. 𝗗𝗗𝗨𝗠 2020, it's pretty much a blueprint for an advanced utopia, a superfluid modernity, and AI-authored manifesto for living, and a world-building project of an oppressive techno-scientific future. Our work extrapolate or stretch to an extreme as well, the multiple and sometimes uncertain vision of the futurity of the 1990s for our time. So the following slide are pretty much example of the new manifesto with the robot manifesto envisioning 𝗗𝗗𝗨𝗠 2020.
Dr. Mahathir Mohamad has consistently warned of a shift in the Muslims from being the protectors of Islam to being the remakers of Islam. The Malaysians, however, have devoted little attention to the question of how this shift will be accomplished. For instance, the MIM, when discussing the shift to the use of the automobile, has focused almost exclusively on the ability of the Muslim community to absorb the new passenger car use. The new policies on the role of the automobile in the teaching of Islam seem to suggest that teaching the importance of Islam in the teaching of science and technology is bound up with the teaching of the importance of science and technology in the promotion of Islam. For the Muslim community, who are trained in the sciences, the scientific statement regarding the function of the automobile is primarily an expression of personal preference.
The Malaysian economy is in a period of great economic growth and much investment has been devoted to developing IT opportunities. It is the domain of large, successful private firms, the type that would take home large quantities of capital and invest it in new projects.
Malaysia's capital controls introduced in the wake of the global financial crisis were initially conceived as being capable of addressing the growing pains of capital outflows, including ailing companies and households. But in the ensuing months, the state began to notice that some of the most vulnerable sectors in the capital account were not meeting the growth targets for the year. As a result, the state imposed controls to contain capital outflows and to contain outflows in a number of sectors. Imposing limits on capital flows marked a significant shift in the Malaysian policy-making structure from must-have measures to should-be-considered territory for the second quarter of 1997. While the NICAC was resolving the crisis, the NICAC was also implementing policies to deal with the inward investment by the NICE and the strengthening of the capital account by eliminating the charge on foreign dividends.
While we slowly move into the realm of the Metaverse, the Meta is pretty much considered to be our next stage of how we use technologies. It's the successor to the internet age. The Metaverse can extend to digital architecture, world building, digital fashion, social media, augmented reality, virtual store, video games, and sometimes a non-fungible token and NFT. But brands has kind of began dabbling into Metaverse principle even before the term become a commonplace, right? So as humans become entrenched into the idea of the Metaverse and its Gen Z customer base spend more of a reality on it, understanding its full potential can be crucial. It's a new kind of architecture that strives back to become the scaffold and infrastructure for a digitally constructed world. A world where digital cityscape have become the utopia of an AI-fueled gentrification, a blank canvas for storytelling, and in our near-distant future, we also would probably experience a green screen world. This will be what will be left behind in the physical world when everything is collapsed in the lens of our digital augmentation. So yeah, thank you so much for today. If you would like to learn more about all this project, link up and let's continue our conversation. Thank you. Lights on. Thank you.